For more information, go to thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a diversified media enterprises production. I'm Doug Cunningham. Menards, the Midwest home improvement chain owned by billionaire Scott Walker supporter John Menard, is on trial for breaking federal labor law. The National Labor Relations Board trial starts Wednesday in Minneapolis. Menards is accused of misclassifying truckers as independent contractors rather than employees to avoid granting the workers labor law protections and rights. OPEIU's Seth Goldstein brought the case.
We believe that they're employees and therefore have the right to organize a union. This is the first time ever that Menards has been hauled in front of a judge to answer for their labor violations.
A second important issue is Menards' use of mandatory arbitration contracts that illegally deprive workers of legal rights to challenge labor law violations in court.
The Trump-DeVos cuts that are coming are going to really hurt our public schools.
Kelly Sullivan is a Wisconsin public high school teacher still committed to delivering the best public education possible to her students, but she says the school privatization movement embodied by Trump's education secretary is essentially a parasite, sucking public education dry of badly needed resources.
There are a lot of people who are getting into this education privatization movement that are very dangerous because they're all about making profit off of students instead of being about the value of learning and the value of helping kids learn. It's really important to understand that we do have some challenges in education, but cutting the resources and funding is not helping us fix those challenges.
Connecticut public workers are facing demands from Democrat Governor Dan Malloy for $700 million in concessions. At the same time, public worker unions there are contending with dozens of anti-union bills from Republicans in the state legislature. Here's Lori Pelletier, president of the Connecticut AFL-CIO, speaking at a legislative hearing about the attack on collective bargaining and unions in one of America's richest states.
This is more of an agenda that you'd see in Mississippi or Arkansas, even Texas. All these vicious attacks against the fundamental human right of collective bargaining, something that is covered by our Constitution, by the UN and international law. Collective bargaining is a sacred bond. It's not something you can just look at in a snapshot of 3 years. It's an historic document. And so the idea that this General Assembly would have bills where we're attacking workers, attacking their right to a voice at work, is beyond me. This is not Connecticut. This is Arkansas.
Tesla Motors may be modern and cutting edge with its electric vehicles, but it's old school when it comes to worker safety. WorkSafe, a California group pushing for safer conditions for workers, says Tesla's worker injury rate consistently exceeded industry averages. The group's report says Tesla's worker injury rate at its Fremont, California plant is a third higher than average. For serious workplace injuries, it's more than twice the industry average rate. Pro-UAW workers at that plant are trying to organize union representation at Tesla. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
I don't want to abolish government. I simply want to reduce it to the size where I could drag it into the bathroom and drown it in the bathtub.
You bet I cut the taxes at the top.
How dare you? How dare you? Go ahead. Make my day.
The Rick Smith Show starts now.
Now, here's the thing. This is one of those things that makes you go, understand the ramifications, understand the importance of the holiday, especially now, because we have a president who just finished jaunting across the globe, selling weapons to the Saudis, alienating our friends, and with all of the discussion and all of the investigation into ties with Russia, you've got to be thinking about all of those people who fought, bled, and died for the future of this country, for democracy. I watched the president lay a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier, and I got to be honest, I couldn't stop thinking about his attacks on the Khan family. I look at that trip, and I couldn't help but think about Trump gleefully tweeting out that he sold massive amounts of arms to the Saudis, and I got wondered, how many more names would we be adding to the list of those that we are supposed to remember and that we must remember on days like Memorial Day. Yesterday, I spent a bit of time thinking about my grandfather and his generation, the ones who fought World War II. And he was someone who was, honestly, I didn't know that he had actually fought in the war. I knew nothing about it until I was in high school, and the military recruiter came to the house, and he about lost his mind and shared with me some of the realities of military life that, look, I had seen as a kid. Where I grew up in a housing project on the west side of Cleveland, I saw those men coming back from Vietnam, basically just dumped into our community. Broken minds, battered bodies, horrible drug and alcohol addiction problems, and just dumped. I remember, every person I saw with the big, heavy green army coat was someone who was damaged in one way or another. And it didn't appear as though anyone was helping them. So on Memorial Day, I think about those things. I think about those people that I've known over the years and those people who did fight for this country, and, well, their lives were never the same. And as I said yesterday, it's a day for us to remember those things, but also to resolve to not add more names to the list needlessly. And I'm afraid, and this is one of those moments where you go back and you look at our race to war during the Bush administration. I remember at the time, everybody thought it was going to be just like it was in the 90s. Going to go in, it'll be a 2-week adventure in the sand. It'll be over in no time at all, and we'll have parades, and it'll be great, and more babies will be born, and it'll be fantastic. Here we are, all these years later, 14 years later, still fighting, still people dying, still people being injured and harmed. And over the weekend, on our weekly TV program, I talked about the Trump budget. I talked about the massive cuts, and like I did last week, to the VA programs, to veterans programs, and how horrible they were. And how what we're seeing right in front of our eyes, what we're seeing happening right before us, is a starving of the VA, a starving of all the things that we hold, and a move to a privatized system. There's no surprise there. Evidently, that caught the ire of a woman whose husband is a 100% disabled war veteran. And her story is absolutely heartbreaking. And it's exactly what I feared was going to happen when we raced to war as a nation hell-bent on revenge. I mean, I remember talking about this on air at the time, saying that, if we're going to go do these things, you've got to have the money set aside for the injuries, for the broken lives, for all of the problems that are going to arise. Because I don't want my children to see what I saw as a kid. That every time you see that heavy green army coat, that it's someone who's broken. And at the time I was assured, no, we're going to fully fund. We're going to do these things. And yet you see budget after budget after budget, the funding falling short. You see opportunity to make things better go by the wayside. It is an absolute crime that someone who served this country and who was injured in our name cannot simply get an appointment to be seen for an injury that they sustained while defending this country. It is an absolute crime. should never happen in this country. Never. And to hear her story and to hear the struggles that they go through is just, heartbreaking. Now, the main point that she made to me was that she was in favor. She's a Trump supporter, made that very clear, and was fully in favor of Trump's move towards privatizing the VA and giving veterans the ability to go to the private market. My position on it has always been fairly simple. The second you destroy the VA is the second you destroy all of the research and all of the ability to take care of those veterans. The institutional knowledge goes away. And if you think appointments are hard to get now, wait till you have to schedule them in the private market. Because when I messed up my neck and had a whole bunch of problems, it was months to get an appointment with a neurologist. It was months to get things done. So this idea that everything's instantaneous in the free market is not accurate. I struggle on so many points with what's going on. And it comes back to we're just not adequately funding it. I talk to people who this is what they do. And they all tell me the same thing. We can't get rid of the VA. Once that happens, veterans are like anyone else and easily shunned aside. If we're going to send people into harm's way, if we're going to put them on a pedestal, if we're going to have politicians who want to take photos with them and use them as political propaganda, we should at least, in my view, just at least make sure that they're cared for. And again, I go back to this email from this woman, just absolutely heartbreaking. And I don't know where else to go with that other than it. I read her email several times and just, how do you respond to someone who's telling you that life on a daily basis is ever more increasingly difficult? While looking at the Trump budget, which cuts billions of dollars from those programs. I mean, now understand, this is a guy who, said that he was going to do things different. He was going to make sure that all of those programs were funded, that they're going to get the care that they need. Yet what they've offered is a gimmick, another conservative gimmick. All in the vein of we've created a nice crisis. We've overwhelmed a system that can't handle the number of people that need the system. We haven't expanded it. We haven't invested in it. We haven't grown it. What they've done is they've actually, constricted it because, again, in his budget, they've cut funding for facilities. But they've offered a little bit of money in the way of, here, go somewhere else. Go to a different doctor who, honestly, is probably not going to have a clue on how to deal with your amputation problems or whatever the PTSD or whatever the problem is, because they don't have the institutional knowledge. The other side of it is the privatization angle. What's frustrating, again, this is another thing that we should be doing for ourselves, and we should be doing much better, that those who are in control are deliberately, in my view, destroying so that they can profitize it. And what's frustrating to me is we do this to ourselves. I mean, the way the working class of this country is treated is, again, it's an absolute crime. But sadly, we allow it to happen to ourselves by not voting or by voting for people who are insane. And I look at Donald Trump as, I get it. When you're drowning, when someone throws you what you think is a lifeline, even though it's an anchor, you're going to grab it. And I look at this budget and I go back to the budget. The budget is a true test of what is the priority of this administration. What are their priorities? What are their morals? What do they believe? And what they believe is give more money to rich people and cut programs like these at the VA and then move to privatization. That's the reality. And there's something absolutely wrong with that, which is why I think we must, as a working class, stand and fight back. That's simple. Anyway, today on the program, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Russian stuff. Lots on that front over the weekend. We're going to talk about a lockout up in New Hampshire. Teachers being fired in Chicago. Tons and tons of stuff. Love to hear your thoughts. Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
All of my life I have searched for clarity. I have wrestled with two paths buried deep inside of me. I lost some rounds, been knocked around, felt my share of defeat. Yet somehow I've always managed to get back on my feet.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day that came to be known as the Republic Steel Massacre, or the Memorial Day Massacre in Chicago, Illinois. Workers had gathered to rally for a union at the Republic Steel plant. The crowd included men, women, and children, and began with a festive holiday atmosphere. But soon the festivity gave way to horror as police opened fire, shooting indiscriminately into the crowd of workers. 10 workers were slain, many others were injured. The violence was caught by a film camera, which captured chilling scenes of policemen beating workers with clubs as they tried to flee the violence. One of those workers was a woman by the name of Guadalupe Marshall. Lupe had come to the United States from Mexico in 1917. At the time of the strike, she was working for the famed Chicago Hull House, researching the conditions of Mexican workers in the city. During the massacre, she was wounded in the head. She was then shoved into a patrol wagon, where she tried to help other wounded people. One of the wounded died in her arms. Later, she testified before the U.S. Senate Committee of Education and Labor about what she saw that day. She said, quote, "As we were walking along to the patrol wagon, I noticed men lying all over the field. Some of them were motionless, some were groaning, but nearly all of those that were lying down had their heads covered with blood, and their clothing was stained with blood." The Senate committee helped expose what happened that bloody day in Chicago. The local newspaper blamed the violence on the workers, and the film of the event was suppressed by the city.
Republic's bloody ground, the 30th of May. Oh, brothers, lift your voices high for them that died that day. The men who make our country steel, the toilers in the mill, they set in union.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
There's power in a factory, power in the land, power in the hand of the worker. But it all amounts to nothing if together we don't stand. There is power in a union.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. So on May 21st, Westinghouse Electric Company, the world's leading supplier of nuclear technology, went nuclear on their 172 employees by kicking them to the curb and locking them out of their jobs. And the thing is this story is, look, it's becoming all too familiar, and it's going to get worse as it appears these big companies and really corporate America is reading from the same Crush the Workers handbook. That's why I've asked Dwayne Egan to come talk with us. He's chief steward for the Boilermakers Local 651 there in New Hampshire, here to explain what's going on in the plant, what happened, why we're seeing this, and how we can help. Dwayne, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you, Rick. We really appreciate you helping us get the word out.
So explain to me what's going on here. I mean, you think of Westinghouse, a big company. What's going on?
Well, it's just another example of giant corporate America just wanting to crush the backs of the union. Unfortunately, our company filed for bankruptcy 3 weeks before our contract expired April 30th. And we feel they're being very opportunistic to use that bankruptcy to get out of all their debt, but also strip the benefits of all the different unions that work for them. Our shop has been very, very profitable last year. We had somewhat of a slow year, we still made $7.5 million in profit for them. And now they want to make even more by freezing our pensions, taking our severance package away, increasing our medical costs for our families 3 times what we normally pay, and offer us no raises. And they did not bargain in good faith.
So basically, the contract they've offered you is you'll get no raise. You're going to pay considerably more for health care. We're going to freeze your pensions, and you should be happy. And that's a good thing, right?
Yes, I'm sorry. I just you cut out. Just came back. Yeah, they're freezing our pension. Our health care costs are skyrocketing. Unfortunately, our company is self-insured. So when they locked us out on the 21st, our insurance ended at midnight. And it's very devastating to a lot of our families not to have our health insurance. But we just want to get back to work. We've continually asked the company to allow us to work and to continue to negotiate. When they made their final offer, the body rejected the offer and asked for an extension to keep working and keep talking. They granted us a 30-day extension, at which time they refused to negotiate. We asked every day, come to the table, and they refused. They were waiting for us to get closer to the end of the extension and hold a.
It sounds to me, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like this was kind of the plan. I mean, at the end of the day, normally one would think that you want to sit down. You want if you really want to come to an agreement and you really want to keep industrial peace and harmony, that you're going to sit down, you're going to negotiate, until there's nothing more to negotiate. It just seems to me, from what I'm hearing, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that this seems like it was the game plan from the beginning.
Yes, I think this was the plan from the beginning. They just took it out of break the backs of the union handbook. They offered us nothing, when no raises, stripped the benefits, and when we refused, they reluctantly granted the extension just to wait and see what we would do. And they just tried to use scare tactics for us to agree. They ended up the extension 9 days early and threatened a lockout. We're filing unfair labor practice charges on them as we speak. We feel that you can't, negotiate unfairly and then threaten a lockout just to get your way.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Dwayne. I mean, Westinghouse is a huge multinational corporation. How much of this could be that there are other contracts coming up down the line and they want to use you as the example?
I believe you hit the nail on the head, Rick. It's we feel that's exactly what's happening. Locally, our facility wants us back to work. They're desperate to get us back to work so our facility can be successful. But the management at corporate, they're looking down the future. We have another IEPW sister company coming up to their contract in August. We have another plant across the pond in Springfield, UK, that has a very large contract going to be coming up. They want to break our backs and show all these other unions they need to just lie down and accept what they're going to get or lose their jobs. So I believe that the company is trying to make an example out of 651.
So let me ask you this then, because you said something that caught my attention. You said the facility wants you guys back because you got a lot of work to do and things are backing up. So it isn't the local facility that's negotiating this. You're dealing with the corporate people.
Correct. Our plant manager has absolutely nothing to do with the negotiations. It's strictly corporate. Correct.
So what you have is this outside interest who's really, again, I mean, it's their interest as a whole, but, outside of where you are imposing this kind of divide. Because I got to wonder, over the years, what kind of relationship has the union had with management at the facility? I mean, has it been contentious? Have you guys been fighting every contract? What's the past been like?
It's been a little bit strained as far as just local issues. The management wants to flex their muscles, and when it comes to management rights, and kind of stomp on the union's rights and labor laws. But we've always been pretty successful to work through those issues. We do have a symbiotic relationship, obviously, and we want our site to be successful, management and the union. But this definitely stems from corporate wanting to just make more money off the backs of the workers and make an example of 651 to show other unions that they're going to be treated the same. They just need to get in line.
Now, you said your facility is making a decent profit. The overall company, I guess, filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy. What is there a reason for the bankruptcy? I mean, is there a global slowdown? What's going on?
I don't know all the details, but basically, Westinghouse is an engineering firm. We design nuclear reactors, we design the sites, and we procure the parts. My facility, we fabricate the reactor barrel and all the internal components of the reactor vessel. We also build coolant pumps and the motors and thrust bearings that operate the cooling pumps. We also do spare parts whenever a nuke site shuts down for a refueling. We make all the spare parts. What happened was corporate decided to get into the construction arm of the business. They were having some litigation with Chicago Bridge and Iron and Floor, who are building the sites down at Vogtle and Summer. There's 2 nuke sites being constructed as we speak in South Carolina and Georgia. Westinghouse decided, hey, let's buy these companies so they can't sue us, and we're going to manage these sites better than they can and get everything back in line and on schedule. And they fell on their faces, and the schedule is falling behind, and they decided they needed to file Chapter 11 to get out of all the debt and basically put all the burden of building these sites onto the utilities, which I imagine in turn will be passed on to the consumer.
Wow. So here again, another one of these examples of, corporate entity abusing the tax code and then making horrible decisions and then making the workers suffer the consequences for their bad decisions. Am I getting this? Am I in the ballpark?
I agree with you 100%, Rick. I believe that's exactly right. Our CEO, ex-CEO, Danny Roderick, who made all these poor decisions, from what I understand, and I've reached out to our state reps to help us investigate this. From what I understand, he, before he was fired, he had a great golden parachute given to him 2 days before they filed bankruptcy. So it seems like they were kind of taking care of him before they filed and wouldn't be able to. So corporate greed, make some poor decisions, you fall on your face and get paid for it and ride off into the sunset.
And again, it's another one of these moments where you just go, how much more will the working class of this country take? And at the end of this, from what it sounds like is you guys are willing to sit down, negotiate, and come to a fair agreement. Tell me about the healthcare, because, again, what's happening is we're having this massive shift of costs from employers onto the backs of workers. What was the healthcare that they offered you?
I don't want to get too much into too many details, I should say, but basically, our out-of-pocket max is tripling for families. We had an out-of-pocket max for our prescription and out-of-pocket max for our medical. They piggyback them. So going from somewhere around $4,000 for an out-of-pocket max family plan, that increases. But when you increase the prescription, and you stack them together, before the end of the contract, we're looking at almost $14,000 out-of-pocket max. And with our base wage, you're talking more than a quarter of our wages would be going to your medical. I mean, of course, that's for our families that are in a bad way and are hitting their out-of-pocket maximum.
Right.
The premiums going up slightly, but the match, we were 90-10, and then it's going to go to 80-20, and then 75-25. So basically, the company's trying to put a lot more of the burden of the medical costs upon us. So again, they're self-insured. We believe that if we were out in the marketplace, we would be doing a lot better. But Westinghouse decided, hey, this is a great way we can make some money or save some money, and at the detriment of our health, basically.
Yeah, you can save some money by shifting the cost on you. And the reason I ask that is because, look, I mean, all this stuff comes down to wages, hours, conditions. And when you look at the fact that you weren't offered any raise whatsoever, I guess, in the first year, you look at the fact that they, as you said, they froze your pension, and you look at the fact that they want to shift massive amounts of costs for healthcare on your back. It's almost like it was a scenario that no one could take. No reasonable, thoughtful person could possibly say, yeah, that's where we should go.
Yeah, correct. all of my brothers and sisters want to continue working here. We like working at this facility. We enjoy the work, and up until recently, the benefits were pretty fair. Our pension, although it's very small, it's well funded. It's 103% funded. I believe the reason they want to freeze our pension is so that they can skim off the top and utilize that money for themselves. But yeah, we just want to talk. We've continually asked the company to negotiate. They will not. Michelle DeWitt, who is our senior VP of manufacturing, put out a statement hours before they locked us out and spun some lies saying that our contract ended a year ago, and after extensive negotiations, unfortunately, the union would not agree to a fair deal. No one can imagine that this is fair. I mean, we cannot afford to accept these changes to our benefits and continue to work here.
Again, the question is, what is fair? If I say, Dwayne, I'd like to chop off both of your legs, and you go, well, just take one, would that be fair?
That's the scenario. That's basically what it is. Yeah, it's not a fair deal. And again, we're not asking for exorbitant raises. We accept that while they're in bankruptcy, we'll take a zero raise the first year. We're not asking for them to pick up any of the medical costs for us. We want it to just remain the same. Our severance package, we would be agreeable to shrink it. We just do not want to lose it. We have had unlimited overtime. We've worked 7 days a week, 3 shifts a day for about 8 years. And, they ask us to work on a Thanksgiving or New Year's Day to try to get some shipments out. We do it. And we just want to keep working. But they just will not negotiate. They absolutely refuse to come to the table and talk. And, again, I believe they want to make an example of 651. They want to make money off of us or save a lot of money by stripping our benefits. But looking at the big picture, I believe they're going to do this to many other locals at other shops that they own and operate.
They're going to use this bankruptcy as an excuse to go after others as well. So let me ask you, what can we do to help? What can our listeners do?
Well, we have started a GoFundMe page just to help our hardest hit members, the people who, none of us, can really handle no paycheck and no insurance, but we have some members that their families are medically in a really bad way. So we've decided to start a GoFundMe page just to help them with some of their medical costs and immediate needs. If you go to GoFundMe.com, it is local 651 Union Boilermaker Lockout. We'd really appreciate any help, even just a couple bucks if anyone can pitch in. We also, at our international, the brotherhoodofboilermakers.org, on that website, there is a fund set up for us. We've reached out to all the locals and the Boilermakers across North America, but anyone could just go to the website and they have a fund set up where you could mail in a check that'll be dispersed to all of our members. And we just, it's tough to reach your hand out and ask for help, but, we'd really like anyone that could just chip in a couple bucks, help our members that need medicine for their children or have a hard time buying groceries. We'd really appreciate that. And anyone who's listening in New Hampshire, we appreciate it. Just drive by the picket line, give us some honks, and just show a little solidarity.
Absolutely. And we'll make sure we get a link at thericksmithshow.com of how people can donate. Because, look, this is where the battle is. This is the next battle in the class war. This is the next, again, this is you today. It could be anyone down the road tomorrow. So if we can stop, we can fight here. Maybe we save the problem down the road. Dwayne, I appreciate the time. I appreciate your thoughts. Keep up the fight one day longer, brother.
Well, thank you very much. And all our brothers and sisters really appreciate your support, Rick. And thank you very much. God bless.
Good stuff. I appreciate it, Dwayne. Again, if you want to help out, just go to thericksmithshow.com and we'll get a link on how you can throw a couple of bucks, help out the folks who have been locked out by their employer. Again, these are folks who wanted to work. They wanted to sit down. They wanted to negotiate, and the employer kicked them to the curb. Sad stuff. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For working people, come to talk.
It's desperate times, so desperate measures we explore. Marching on the Capitol to lobby leaders for involvement. 3,000 people screaming out, "Where's our government?" Lawsuits and arraignments, members under company surveillance. Public divided, either they love us or they hate us. Profit billions off our back, and is still not enough. They should have took into account that we never give up. We'll be here one day longer. One day longer. The people's voice is stronger. The people's voice is stronger. We work hard for our money. We work hard for respect. Keep fighting for these rights for generations. It's next. One day longer. One day longer. The people's
Your working class radio experience, where hard work, common sense, and rational thoughts are a reality. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. It was a day that would become known as the Memorial Day Massacre. 10 demonstrators were killed by police bullets while protesting at Republic Steel on the southeast side of Chicago. U.S. Steel, also known as Big Steel, had signed a contract with the Steel Workers Organizing Committee, part of the CIO. But several smaller companies, known as Little Steel, refused to recognize the union. This included Republic Steel. The union called for a strike against Little Steel. In Chicago, sympathizers from all around the city gathered on Memorial Day at Sam's Place, a bar where the union set up its strike headquarters. After a round of speeches, the crowd began a march across a field toward the Republic Steel mill. They were stopped midway by a formation of well-armed Chicago police officers. While demonstrators at the front of the procession argued for their right to proceed, police mercilessly fired into the crowd and tracked down people as they fled. Molly West, a typographical union Local 16 member and a youthful demonstrator at the time, remembered hearing the police scream, "Get off the field or I'll put a bullet in your back!" Newsreel footage captured the barbaric and bloody scene. The state's attorney exonerated the police and their assault. But a federal congressional committee found the police had indeed used excessive force. Today, there is a sculpture commemorating those who were killed. The sculpture was created by Ed Blazek, a former employee of the Republic Steel Company. It features 10 steel pipes, each representing a smokestack of the 10 steel mills that once operated in the area. They also represent the 10 demonstrators who were executed for the crime of wanting a better life. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Early Monday morning, my life becomes a drag. Over the hump on Wednesday, you know I'm still feeling bad. Thursday, I'm getting ready to make my getaway. By Friday night, I realized I didn't make enough pay. I got the working class blues.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Again, another, one of these tales that we hear all too often. An assault on decent wages, decent hours, decent conditions, and even hours. I mean, as he said, look, they were working overtime 7 days a week, busting their behind for this company, and the thank you, the appreciation they get is there's the curb. Take a life-altering pay cut, or there's the curb. We impose our will on you, or there's the door. And now look, there are going to be some who say, "Wow, if you don't like it, go somewhere else." That's the mentality that has destroyed the middle class of this country. The fact that you have these nimwits who go, "You know what? If you don't like it, go somewhere else." Here's the reality. The reality is all of these companies are reading off the same script, especially now that you've got Donald J. Trump in the White House. The reality is for the last 40 years, wages in this country for working people have been declining because we've been allowing these companies to get away with assaulting their workforce. And just over the weekend, the New York Times had what I thought was a really good piece on this town of Stormville, Iowa, and Storm Lake, Iowa. And it was talking about, the transformation of the white working class in this community and how over the years, the different, manufacturing plants have gone and returned, and how you've had this massive change in the complexity of labor and, the complexion of labor. And, one of the things that caught me is this guy that they talked to for the article, one of many, said, look, when he went first to go work at this pork processing plant in Storm Lake back in 1980, he was making $16 an hour with benefits. He said it was enough to buy a house. It was enough to, have a couple of cars, a camper, boat. Your wife could stay home. It was a good, solid, middle-class, really difficult physical labor job, but one that paid, one that you could really have a good living. Today, the same job, $16 an hour. Now, you can do the math with me. You're talking 37 years ago, same wage, and worse healthcare benefits, worse working conditions, worse retirement. You're talking a massive shift, a massive redistribution of wealth from the people who work, that prosperous working class that our grandparents' generation fought, bled, and died for, where? Upward to the 1%. I saw a poll over the weekend said 73% of voters think that the tax code is rigged for the wealthy. And I'm going, what the hell's wrong with the other 26%? What do they think? It's perfectly fair. But you look at this, and this plays out over and over and over again. And as the article points out, I had this guy's wages from 1980 till today kept up with inflation, he'd be making $47 an hour. Understand what strong unions did for this country. This gave someone dignity and respect. Hard work, really hard work. As I read through, and again, the Grapes of Wrath, I read through, these accounts of what these chicken and beef and these processing plants, what the working conditions are. They're horrible. They're dangerous. They're either extremely cold or extremely hot, or it's as the article points out, there aren't a lot of white faces in there. There are a lot of people who came here with the thought of my grandparents' generation, which is, I'm going to work in these crummy jobs. I'm going to bust my behind. I'm going to make them as good as I can, but I want my kids doing something else. I want them to be doctors or lawyers or sitting in a corner office somewhere wearing a white shirt and a tie pushing papers around. I don't want them driving trucks or slicing beef or any of this stuff, swinging hammers. No. And what's happened is we've devalued work in this country. Now it's just something that other people do. And I go back to, and one of the things that I try and instill in my kids is there's value in what people do. There's value in what people get up every day and work for. And there should be dignity and respect. And it doesn't matter what you do. And it should come with a reasonable wage. And this is what unions did for a couple of generations. Sadly, what's happened is we've allowed these companies to get away with what's going on up there in New Hampshire, which is the company sees an opportunity. They made horrible decisions. They put themselves in a position where, hey, we can write off about $6.5 billion worth of bad ideas. Just write it off onto the taxpayers, onto the people who we owe that to, and then they'll pass it on to the consumers, and that's the corporation walks away from it. And big bonuses for the CEOs and the executives. And, oh, by the way, we can use this as a great opportunity to claw back those wages, to claw back those health benefits, to claw back that pension. And the one thing that Dwayne said that really, as soon as he said it, they froze our pensions. It's 103% funded. I'm going, kiss that goodbye, because what's happened, can't believe you still have a pension after these corporate raiders have stolen pension after pension after pension over the years. And you go, their battle should be all of our battles. Because understand, the working class is in the same Shark Tank. They're just the flavor of the month today. Eventually, they come for all of us. Eventually, all the working conditions, all the wages go down. Just like in the story in the Times. $16 an hour back in 1980. Same wage today, but worse health care, worse pension, worse conditions. Something wrong, my friends. Something wrong. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back. Stick around. Stay listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Yes, I'm working all the time. It seems to me I could live my life a lot better than I think I am. I guess that's why they call me
making the blue bloods see red. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day known as among the darkest days for labor, the Memorial Day Massacre. For days, strikers had suffered arrests and severe beatings at the hands of Chicago police, who physically prevented them from establishing picket lines at South Chicago's Republic Steel. Joined by supporters from practically all walks of life, strikers decided late in the afternoon to march to the gates, determined to picket. For Michael Dennis, author of The Memorial Day Massacre and the Movement for Industrial Democracy, Southeast Chicago became a crucible in which a wide spectrum of social and political alternatives became possible. The Little Steel strike was propelled by the realization that workers lived in a country dedicated to democratic freedom, but worked under conditions of near autocracy. Men, women, and children, black, white, and Mexican workers all chanted CIO, CIO, as they marched down Green Bay Avenue. The Chicago police waited for them, armed with revolvers, nightsticks, and blackjacks. Strikers defended their right to picket as police once again formed a solid line, preventing their passage. The police soon launched tear gas canisters and began firing into the crowd. The picketers turned away in a futile attempt to escape the staggering brutality. When the dust settled, 10 were killed, 30 more shot, 28 others hospitalized, with 8 suffering permanent disability and another 20 to 30 injured. Virtually all those shot had wounds in the back or side. Michael Dennis notes the massacre cast the die for the strike. Collaboration between municipal officials, corporate leaders, and the military in suppressing the strike would go uncontested by federal authorities and cheered by middle-class opinion. The campaign to organize Little Steel had suffered a crushing blow.
The most important issues of the day. This is the Rick Smith Show.
Big news this morning, a lot of it. The Jared Kushner thing over the weekend, and today, White House Communications Director Mike Dubke evidently tendered his resignation on May 18th, although he hung around, I guess, till the end of the foreign trip. I got to wonder, did he resign because, hey, better opportunity, worried that he's going to be indicted, or was he fired? Don't know. Here to talk about what's going on in Washington, D.C. and around the world, Michael Esker, Talk Media News. Michael, thanks for taking time for us.
Sure. Look, you raised an interesting question about Mike Dubke, the communications director of the White House, who may have jumped, may have been pushed, but I think he has the same problem that Sean Spicer has, which is being a front man for a con man. And that's a very difficult position to be in. Donald Trump, we're told, has come home from his first overseas trip and is absolutely obsessing about the investigation into Russia connections. He's been working the phones, talking to attorneys. He is most disturbed about his son-in-law being looked at so closely by the FBI. Jared Kushner, as you know, is a young man in his 30s with zero political or government experience, and yet Donald Trump assigned to him in a very public way, said that Kushner was going to reinvent government, to solve the opioid crisis, and to achieve peace in the Middle East, which is pretty good. But to do that now with the FBI looking at him and looking at what we're told was his idea to set up a secret communications channel in a Russian facility, and that the Russians themselves were shocked at such a proposal, and the FBI wants to know a lot more about this now.
As we should. But here's the thing. I mean, I've heard a lot of people tell me, but Rick, we've always had back channels to foreign leaders. This isn't unusual. I'm going, no, it's really kind of unusual that we're going to use their communications network so that it's not detected by ours.
Well, not only that, but that in the wake of every U.S. intelligence agency saying without hesitation the Russians hacked into our election. The Russians tried to disrupt our sacred election process. In the wake of that, what do? Do they stand up to them and say, what the hell are you guys doing? No, they say, hey, let's have some secret conversations. That is tough to explain, and they're going to have to try to do it. You know, he just got back from this overseas trip, and the White House has tried to say that this was a big success. Others, more clear-headed, I would say, are saying that that's not the case. The visuals alone, which the White House depends on so much, you know, here was Trump pushing one leader out of the way so he could have a better spot at a photo op. You know, the handshake that wouldn't die with the French president, the relationship with Angela Merkel, who is now saying we cannot rely on the kind of relationship that we have had with America before this. Specifically, the latest reference was in regard to the Paris Climate Accords. You know, and speaking of visuals, you had this visual at the G7 summit meeting with 6 of the 7 leaders going for a walk for several hundred yards, and Trump didn't join them. He got in a golf cart. And some people saw this as a metaphor for his lack of concern over the climate. And, you know, it's just pitiful.
Yeah, but you know, here's the thing, Michael. He could have gotten into one of those big, souped-up, super jacked-up trucks with those idiot coal rollers who were spewing out black smoke. That would have been a better visual.
I suppose we should be thankful for small favors. Paul Krugman, the New York Times columnist and Nobel laureate for economics, had an interesting piece, I think it was yesterday, where he talked about this phony situation where Trump promised to bring back, to lift environmental restrictions, ending the supposed war on coal and bringing back the days when coal mining employed hundreds of thousands of coal miners. And that's just not going to happen.
Never.
And Krugman points out that coal mining jobs fell by 2/3 between 1948 and 1970, which was the year that the Environmental Protection Agency was founded. And so, you know, this cutback was beginning long ago, before we had this raised consciousness about the environment and you know, climate change. And one White House analyst said just the other day, I'm quoting directly here, that coal doesn't really make that much sense anymore. And you know who that was who said it? It was Gary Cohn, the chairman of the National Economic Council, in other words, Trump's own chief economist. So they can't even get their own message straight on this. But as a result, you've got people like Angela Merkel who are saying, we can't rely on the United States the way we have in the past. And we also have the French president, you know, dealing now with Vladimir Putin, and apparently standing him down yesterday, and in ways that Donald Trump, you know, for all the criticism that he has leveled at global leaders around the world, has never said a bad word about Vladimir Putin. So our old alliances are looking rather shaky right now, and the environment is just a part of it.
Yeah, the thing that's scary is that it looks like, you know, the Russians, in my view, are winning this because we're separating ourselves from all of our allies. And that's, to me, you go, wow, the divide and conquer thing working really well for the Russians.
Absolutely. They have got to be just sitting back there and saying, this is working better than we imagined that it might.
Scary,
so that's where we are.
Scary stuff. And you know, I look at the trip. The trip was full of, you know, not big major gaffes. I mean, pushing the prime minister of Montenegro and then wiping off your lapel like you had done something. Not a good visual.
No.
The tweeting out, hey, we sold billions of dollars of arms to the Saudi Arabians. Not a good thing in my view.
Well, you mentioned the tweeting, and he, of course, we've talked about this many times, that he can't get out of his own way, that he tweets impulsively, and just the other night, Sunday night, he tweeted, "I suggest we add more dollars to health care and make it the best anywhere." This, at the same time, his party, the Republicans, are proposing to cut billions of dollars in health care spending. They can't get their message straight.
Is it that he doesn't know what the message is? I mean, because look, I got to be honest. If I were Sean Spicer or the Huckabee woman or even Dubke, I'd be running for the exit because, as you pointed out, every day, it's like he's schizophrenic. He's all over every issue.
And often it seems, you're right, I think, that he doesn't really know the issues. But we're told that often he is directly under the influence of who had his ear most recently. So maybe he should listen to us, and maybe we can get some headway going here.
Yeah, I mean, because you look at, like I said over the weekend, I mean, you look at the cuts to veterans programs, massive cuts to veterans' health care issues, while giving a little bit back in the form of these the ability to go into a private market. But I remember the campaign. He was he wrapped himself in every photo op he could get with veterans.
Absolutely. I'm going to look out for them the way nobody has looked out for them before. We're going to have a strong military, and the guys who come home, we're going to take care of them the way no one ever has, and certainly the way Hillary Clinton wouldn't and Barack Obama wouldn't. I mean, it was baloney.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I guess the other question to that is we're going to take care of them in ways that no one else has. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
We don't know, do we? Because he changes from day to day, from hour to hour. We just don't know. The guy is so inconsistent, and I think you're right. I think it is that he really does not know what the issues are. We are told consistently that he does not read the White House briefings, that he has a very short attention span, that they are making these things as simple for him as they can. These are not things to build confidence in those of us who are very concerned about the future of the country.
Yeah, I mean, I look at that tweet, though. We should put more money into it. While your budget and your tax plan cut about $1.4 trillion from Medicaid, you go, explain to me again how you're going to put more money into those things. And look, I'm with you. I'm with you on the idea of priming the pump. I'm with you on the idea of building infrastructure. I'm with you on the idea of adding more money to health care. But what you're actually doing, what your party is doing, what your platforms are, what the policy is the direct opposite of what you're saying.
At the same time, he wants to give tax breaks to the rich.
Well, look, he needs the money. I mean, because look, at some point the tax returns are going to have to come out, and he's got a lot of ground to make up.
Yes, he does, and but the economic plans that he has put forward don't make up that economic ground.
Dangerous stuff.
Yeah,
crazy stuff, Mike. I appreciate the time. Always great talking with you.
You too. Take care.
Our good friend Michael Olesker, Talk Media News. I mean, look, at the end of this, it is what it is. It's like the guy is schizophrenic. And maybe it is. Maybe, as Propane Jane says, he's got mental deficiencies. Maybe it's dementia. Maybe it's a whole bunch of things. But I'll tell you what maybe isn't. It isn't good for us as a country to be all over the map with our allies. It's not a good place to be where our allies are looking at us sideways going, you going to be with us or against us? Trouble. Lots of trouble. Quick break. Right back.
Radio of, for, and by we the working people. The Rick Smith Show.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a diversified media enterprises production. I'm Doug Cunningham. Menards, the Midwest home improvement chain owned by billionaire Scott Walker supporter John Menard, is on trial for breaking federal labor law. The National Labor Relations Board trial starts Wednesday in Minneapolis. Menards is accused of misclassifying truckers as independent contractors rather than employees to avoid granting the workers labor law protections and rights. OPEIU's Seth Goldstein brought the case.
We believe that they're employees and therefore have the right to organize a union. This is the first time ever that Menards has been hauled in front of a judge to answer for their labor violations.
A second important issue is Menards' use of mandatory arbitration contracts that illegally deprive workers of legal rights to challenge labor law violations in court.
The Trump-DeVos cuts that are coming are going to really hurt our public schools.
Kelly Sullivan is a Wisconsin public high school teacher still committed to delivering the best public education possible to her students, but she says the school privatization movement embodied by Trump's education secretary is essentially a parasite, sucking public education dry of badly needed resources.
There are a lot of people who are getting into this education privatization movement that are very dangerous because they're all about making profit off of students instead of being about the value of learning and the value of helping kids learn. It's really important to understand that we do have some challenges in education, but cutting the resources and funding is not helping us fix those challenges.
Connecticut public workers are facing demands from Democrat Governor Dan Malloy for $700 million in concessions. At the same time, public worker unions there are contending with dozens of anti-union bills from Republicans in the state legislature. Here's Lori Pelletier, president of the Connecticut AFL-CIO, speaking at a legislative hearing about the attack on collective bargaining and unions in one of America's richest states.
This is more of an agenda that you'd see in Mississippi or Arkansas, even Texas. All these vicious attacks against the fundamental human right of collective bargaining, something that is covered by our Constitution, by the UN and international law. Collective bargaining is a sacred bond. It's not something you can just look at in a snapshot of 3 years. It's a historic document. And so the idea that this General Assembly would have bills where we're attacking workers, attacking their right to a voice at work, is beyond me. This is not Connecticut. This is Arkansas.
Tesla Motors may be modern and cutting edge with its electric vehicles, but it's old school when it comes to worker safety. WorkSafe, a California group pushing for safer conditions for workers, says Tesla's worker injury rate consistently exceeded industry averages. The group's report says Tesla's worker injury rate at its Fremont, California plant is a third higher than average. For serious workplace injuries, it's more than twice the industry average rate. Pro-UAW workers at that plant are trying to organize union representation at Tesla. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. So thank goodness for Ivanka Trump HQ's Twitter account yesterday. I don't know what I would have done for the Memorial Day holiday. I don't know what, and I'm sure millions of people across the country were, just in need of a plan on what to do for Memorial Day. In fact, the Twitter account tweeted out a really great how-to on how to make champagne popsicles this Memorial Day. Yep, you could have your very own champagne popsicle on the day that we're supposed to be remembering and memorializing and honoring those who died for our country. Also on the help page, ways to have a picnic and pack your basket, more for barbecue fans, more champagne. You could cap off the night with these champagne popsicles, wear all white day kind of things, the little style, and some tunes to play along, and how to pack your picnic basket like a pro. Not one thing about the actual meaning of the day, but lots of really great tips on how the 1% live. I don't even know where to go with that. It's that ridiculous and that outrageous. Anyway, this weekend coming up, June 3rd, the big March for Truth. And here to talk a little bit about it, I've asked our good friend Andrea Chalupa to come talk with us, one of the organizers of the March for Truth. Andrea, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me, Rick. How were your champagne popsicles this Memorial Day weekend?
I didn't have any champagne. It's not something we keep in the house. Sorry. Do you keep it in your house? I mean, do you have a whole stash? You have a wine room and all that?
I certainly don't. But, you know, when I saw Ivanka's lifestyle brand tweet telling Americans to get champagne popsicles to honor Memorial Day, our veterans who have given their lives, who have sacrificed, you know, not only their lives, but, you know, the stress, the pressures that PTSD and other effects of combat have on families, you know, for her to come out with something so callous was just absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah, I mean, the optics, not good. But again, it shows the disconnect between the lives that the mass of us lead and the life that she leads.
And you know what it actually made me think of when I first saw it, too, in addition to that, was it made me imagine Ivanka's social circle. She's good friends with the wife of Roman Abramovich, one of the richest men in the world, who's also like a son to Vladimir Putin. His wife was Ivanka's guest at the inauguration. So this is insane. So Roman Abramovich, one of the beloved oligarch sons, so to speak, of Vladimir Putin, he owns one of the most expensive yachts in the world, a mega yacht that's worth $1.5 billion. It's called the Eclipse. So when Ivanka sends this tweet on Memorial Day, I'm just imagining her, Dasha, Roman Abramovich enjoying these champagne popsicles on the Eclipse yacht.
So then the story of Kushner wanting back channels, you don't even need to get back channels. They've got back channels.
No, just fire up the champagne popsicles and get on the Eclipse and, you know, talk away. Yeah, exactly.
So you put any credence in this story that Kushner was attempting to create a back channel using Russian communications infrastructure?
Absolutely. I mean, that sounds like him. Like, he has no idea what he's doing. Elizabeth Spears, who worked for Kushner at The Observer, has said as much. What's really funny is that I believe around this time when this would have been happening, she got an alert that Kushner had joined Signal, because of course she had his number in her phone as part of her contacts. And so anytime somebody in your contacts joins Signal and you're on Signal, you get notified. And so she got a notification that Jared Kushner was on Signal. Why the heck would somebody who is in the White House, who is, you know, suddenly thrust into one of the most high-level, most important jobs in the entire world, why would that individual have a need to be on Signal? What is he trying to hide?
Yeah, but for those of us who don't have a clue what you're talking about, what is Signal?
Signal is a secure app, an encryption app that basically encrypts your text messages as you communicate back and forth. And so people use it if they need to share sensitive information, have conversations that they don't want to have intercepted. But of course, if anybody has hacked your phone and they're inside your phone, it doesn't matter. But if they have it, if your phone is clean, you can communicate through Signal and just have that peace of mind that your messages aren't being read as they're transmitted.
So now, is he still using this Signal as one of the chief, White House advisors with access to highly classified information? Because look, this story alone, in my view, his security, he should have never gotten the security clearance, in my view. But shouldn't it, at the minimum, be pulled from him?
Absolutely. I mean, this is somebody who, that wasn't just a typo. Kushner's lawyer is trying to claim that he left off his contacts with the Russian ambassador, who's also, of course, a Russian spy master, as we now know. His lawyer is trying to claim that he left this off his security clearance form as a typo. But no, the fact that that we now know through this Washington Post report that he was trying to set up a secret back channel, and which gives context to that secret Seychelles meeting that happened. Remember, we had Eric Prince going to meet Putin's representatives on a remote island off the coast of Africa in Seychelles. So that explains why they went out there. They were trying to have these secret conversations with Putin to see how clearly, given all the information that we now have access to, clearly to see how the relationship could carry on mutually beneficially. So no, this lends greater pressure to the fact that Kushner deliberately left stupidly, just showing how naive he is that he would be caught leaving off the fact that he had contacts with that Russian spy master ambassador.
I got to be honest, for all of the secrecy they're not very good at it. I mean, it almost seems like an episode of, the Keystone Cops go to Russia.
Right. It's far more Veep than it is James Bond, definitely.
I mean, because at some point, you go, if you're that bad at this, maybe you shouldn't be doing it.
I completely agree with you. That's why we need a march for truth. We need to put pressure on these guys. We need to name and shame and expose them because, they as you see, like they hold our domestic and foreign security in their hands. And like you said, they're being very much Keystone Cops about it.
Yeah, I mean, I said over the weekend that if you remember the image of Kushner going to Iraq with the Kush on there, I just take the K out and put a T because he's going to be very popular in prison. And then someone reminded me that Donald would be more than happy to pardon everyone on his way out the door.
Well, let's make sure he doesn't do that. No, I think that's why we have this urgency for June 3rd nationwide. We're up to over 130 protests nationwide for a March for Truth. This is happening not only in blue states but across red states. Americans finally, after years of Putin's aggression, are finally waking up to what a sophisticated threat that Russia is. The Kremlin is determined to use its militarized propaganda against us, to not only sow division within the liberal opposition to the growing right-wing powers in the U.S., but also, to help install elected leaders like Donald Trump. Like they were a major force in helping get Trump elected. And there's bombshell after bombshell that's coming out, but this is such a deep and wide web. This is an operation that's been going on for years. So there's still a lot more to come out. So Americans have to understand that Trump did not become president overnight. This was an operation that helped him, that developed over years. It's very sophisticated. It's deeply funded. So to sort of shine light on everything, it's going to take time. It's going to take pressure. So we encourage everyone to come out on June 3rd for March for Truth, to join this growing movement, to join this building infrastructure of Americans. We have the newsletter, social media account presence where we can keep everyone updated on the most urgent stories as they develop. This isn't one day that's going to solve everything. It's the start of something much larger. It's the start of a much greater vigilance that we desperately need in America right now to weed out these elements, weed out this Russian infiltration over the course of years.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. If someone wanted to sign up for your newsletter, how would they go about that?
Visit our website at marchfortruth.info.
And we'll make sure we get a link at thericksmithshow.com. Over the weekend, John McCain had done an interview on the, I think it was yesterday. He did an interview with Australian Broadcasting Company, one of the programs over there. And he said that, ISIS can do terrible things, but it's the Russians who tried to destroy the fundamentals of democracy and that tried to change the outcome of our election. Now, interestingly enough, he said there's no evidence that they succeeded, but they tried. I got to be honest. I'm thinking McCain's kind of diminishing what actually happened.
Absolutely, and it's very out of character. McCain, more than anyone, has been very outspoken on countering Putin. Right after the election, McCain visited Ukraine and Baltic states and really, showed America's support for those countries that live in the shadow of Putin's aggression. What's really bizarre, anytime a Republican who should know better speaks that way, we're reminded by what the intelligence report that President Obama ordered discovered, and what that intelligence report exposed, which is the fact that it wasn't just the Democrats who were deeply hacked by the Russians. It was also the Republican Party, including specific members of Republican leadership. So anytime a Republican speaks out of turn, who should know better, who says things like that, you sort of wonder, okay, well, what information do the Russians have on Republicans, including Republican leaders, that has yet to be weaponized? So it's very suspicious. One thing that I want to sort of emphasize, Putin has already won. He's already won the benefits of having Trump in office. You see that with this disastrous European this foreign trip that Trump just went on. It was a total disaster. He was an embarrassment every stop he went to. And how did that tour end? That ended with Angela Merkel, the new leader of the free world, announcing that Europe can no longer depend on the United States. that's music to Putin's ears.
Yeah,
that right there alone is a gift.
Yeah, I was right where I was going to go, man, because she said that the Europeans must really take our destiny into our own hands. On Sunday at a campaign rally, she said the times when we could completely rely on others are, to an extent, over. That, again, music to the ears.
That's the Atlantic Alliance that has been in effect for, since FDR. That's what's allowed us to stand up against tyranny and to stand for free press, free speech, and the values of democracy. So, obviously Putin is trying to not only export protecting Russia's interests, but export his, anti-gay, his so-called Christian agenda, which as a Christian I can tell you it's completely offensive to me. It's like, to me, like Putin is to Christians what ISIS is to Islam. Like, that's not Christianity. Like preaching hate and taking away personal rights and freedoms. Like, that's the opposite of Christ's teaching. So, but that's the sort of fundamentalism that Putin wants to export. That's why he's propping up the Republican Party, because they've gone so far right. It's just become like this cancer that Putin and far right parties around the world are united and trying to spread. And now the alliance against that is weakening.
I mean, it's not even fundamentalism anymore. It's just absolute radical extremism. And you have this morning, you had the president tweet out, we have a massive trade deficit with Germany, plus they pay far less than they should on NATO and military. Very bad for U.S. This will change. Again, doubling down on that division.
Absolutely. And just to emphasize, everybody's holding their breath, waiting for Russian sanctions to be pulled back. They're waiting for some big financial prize to land in Putin's lap as a result of this Trump administration. But people have to stop and realize the prizes are constantly being delivered. So just to give you another example, back in December, Congress passed legislation that would aggressively combat Russian propaganda efforts. This wasn't just targeting the Russians, but also Chinese or any hostile regime that was leading an information war against us, and that includes also extremist propaganda that's out there. So as we saw with the murders in the white supremacist murderer in Portland, Oregon, this whole sort of fake news epidemic. It's not just about Russia; it's also just about the extremists out there. And so this legislation that Congress passed would combat fake news. And what's now happening is that this legislation is being held up because the State Department must now officially ask for it. So the money is there, the funding is there to set up this global task force inside the United States government that would combat extremist propaganda, combat fake news. The money is there to do this. The strategy is there to do this. But it all depends now on Rex Tillerson pulling the trigger and formally allowing this money to come in, because the funding is to be set up in the State Department, and he has yet to do that. Wow. So do you understand? This is a man. This is a gift to Putin. Rex Tillerson sitting on this legislation, keeping it from being active. If anyone's interested in learning more about it, it's the Countering Disinformation and Propaganda Act that was passed as part of the National Defense Authorization Act for 2017. To me, I'm hearing from sources on Capitol Hill and who work on the front lines of human rights in Russia and Ukraine, and they say Rex Tillerson is holding this up. There's no reason he should be.
Well, again, you go back to the medal and the big dinner and the relationship again back with Putin and Russia and just so many ties, which is why I think this weekend's march so important to show the strength, the unity, and to really push our elected leaders into pursuing this wherever it takes us. Where will you be on Saturday, Andrea?
Well, on Saturday, I'm going to be in New York City at Foley Square at 9 a.m. We have an excellent list of speakers. We have New York Times bestselling author and historian Timothy Snyder, who wrote On Tyranny, which is the guide for combating authoritarianism. So Timothy Snyder is going to be on site speaking at March for Truth. We also have Representative Jerry Nadler. We have Rosie O'Donnell. We have we have also Javier Munez, the star of Hamilton on Broadway. He's going to be performing an original song, a song for us there at the New York March for Truth. So I will be there But no matter where you are in the country, you can find a March for Truth near you. Just go to marchfortruth.info.
I look forward to it, and I hope to see you this weekend because we're going to be traveling to New York to cover that march and to participate as well. Andrea, I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much.
Always great talking with you. Again, if you want to check out the website, we've got a link at thericksmithshow.com, marchfortruth.info. Check it out. Quick break, right back. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day that came to be known as the Republic Steel Massacre, or the Memorial Day Massacre in Chicago, Illinois. Workers had gathered to rally for a union at the Republic Steel plant. The crowd included men, women, and children, and began with a festive holiday atmosphere. But soon the festivity gave way to horror as police opened fire, shooting indiscriminately into the crowd of workers. 10 workers were slain, many others were injured. The violence was caught by a film camera, which captured chilling scenes of policemen beating workers with clubs as they tried to flee the violence. One of those workers was a woman by the name of Guadalupe Marshall. Lupe had come to the United States from Mexico in 1917. At the time of the strike, she was working for the famed Chicago Hull House, researching the conditions of Mexican workers in the city. During the massacre, she was wounded in the head. She was then shoved into a patrol wagon, where she tried to help other wounded people. One of the wounded died in her arms. Later, she testified before the U.S. Senate Committee of Education and Labor about what she saw that day. She said, quote, "As we were walking along to the patrol wagon, I noticed men lying all over the field. Some of them were motionless, some were groaning, but nearly all of those that were lying down had their heads covered with blood, and their clothing was stained with blood." The Senate committee helped expose what happened that bloody day in Chicago. The local newspaper blamed the violence on the workers, and the film of the event was suppressed by the city.
Republic's bloody ground, the 30th of May. Oh, brothers, lift your voices high for them that died that day. The men who make our country steel, the toilers in the mill. They said in union.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
You look at all of this, and individually, I keep saying this, individually, one thing you go, well, you can explain that away. You can explain away that the Trump administration may have wanted to have a back channel and may have wanted to pursue back channels with foreign leaders so they can have frank discussions that aren't privy to everyone. You kind of get that. You find out that Eric Prince went to meet with Putin on an island somewhere near Africa. You go, okay, maybe you're trying to set up a back channel that way. Maybe you're trying to. You got a national security advisor who goes and gives speeches, lies on the form. You got an attorney general who lies that he met with Russians and says, "Oh, the Justice Department told me not to do it." You go through all of these things, and there's just so much, and it's every day just inundated. Bang, 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 bang. As John McCain said, the centipede's losing shoes. Every day another shoe's dropping. To where, look, if you're Trump and you truly didn't do anything wrong, you should support an investigation. Get behind it. Say, look, we got to clear this up because nothing, in my view, can get done. Nothing can get done until we know whether the Russians, meddled in our elections. And for those who say, well, it didn't change my vote. All of the information that came out that was one-sided changed people's votes. I know people who said, the emails, all the emails of Podestas and all those emails that came out that we heard what they were saying. And, I go back to, if someone got into your emails and went through all of your emails, and I was just looking at mine here a second ago, I've got something like 50,000 emails over the last, year and a half or so. If someone went through that, have I said something that maybe I wouldn't want broadcast all over the world? I mean, stop and think about it. Think about things that you've sent, things that you've said. All of that stuff unvarnished, without context, without understanding how all that goes into. I've advised, a couple of political candidates on how I would handle things. Is that something I would say in public? Maybe not. People want my unvarnished opinion on things, and I give it. Is it something I want in public? No. Especially not if I was running for public office. All of that stuff was out front and center. And to be honest, really, the stuff that was released, I didn't think was absolutely horrible. I was actually shocked that it wasn't worse. But it did change people's votes. And when you have what's going on in this country, and understand, both on the right and on the left, you've got big Russian money involved in our media. We're one of the only countries in the entire world that allows foreign governments to lobby ours. We're one of the only countries in the world that allows foreign companies to own our media, to own our infrastructure, to own us. So are we surprised? I mean, honestly, are we surprised that they've got an agenda? I remember people saying, well, Al Jazeera, they're doing good reporting. And they were. They did some good reporting. They were telling, in certain areas, truth. But they were telling their version of what they wanted you to see. And I remember people saying, well, Rick, you do a great show. You should go to RT or Al Jazeera or, one of those networks. And I'm going, no. The optics are terrible. I'm not going to go work for a foreign entity. Just not going to do it. And yet, it's the money. And I guess maybe it's us. Maybe it's this capitalist, mentality we have where it doesn't matter as long as it's green. The Russians want to come in, buy up, television space. Let them. Al Qaeda wants to buy some. Let them. It's good. It's money. I shouldn't say Al Qaeda. Al Jazeera, a foreign. Let them. It's it's kind of insane when you stop and really think about it. It's kind of nuts what we've allowed to happen in this country. And for me, the idea of having an investigation and an open conversation about what happened, how it happened, why it happened, and how we make sure it never happens again has to be had. And look, if you're the leader of this country, you want that. You want that. You want to make sure that the future of this country is secure. But you look around, and I'll be honest, you look at this recent tour, as Andrea pointed out, Putin's laughing all the way back to the Kremlin. Because we're dividing up the world. Long-time alliances are in jeopardy. And whoever the next president is got a lot of work to do. I mean, we just dug out of 8 years of George W. Bush. Our reputation around the world was on the rise. We were no longer the ugly American. We just sent the ugliest of Americans out onto the center stage, and he proved, well, he's an ugly American. I mean, the video of pushing the Prime Minister of Montenegro was just, and then the wiping off of the lapel like he actually did some work was wow. Scary, scary times. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Will you be attending one of the June 3rd March for Truth events around the country? I'm hoping they'll live stream it for folks who don't have the ability to come out, but I'm looking forward to going to New York and participating and seeing some of the speakers and some of the goings-on. Again, I'd love to hear your thoughts, rick@thericksmithshow.com. When we come back, we're going to talk with Sarah Chambers, a Chicago public school teacher who, evidently the work that she does informing parents of just what the school district is doing to make sure that their children don't get the help they need. The special education kids don't get the help they need. Fired, I guess. And you got to wonder why. I think we all know why, but we'll find out when we come back. Quick break. Right back after this.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
That budget that Trump has presented is a grotesquely immoral budget.
Trump's proposed budget cuts deeply into the environment. Mudslide buries California's iconic Pacific Coast Highway. Wind farm company proposes to retrain coal miners to be wind technicians for free. Plus,
the Pope's gifts 3 of his encyclicals, one including his views on climate change.
Pope Francis offers a gift and a message to President Trump.
All of those gifts, all of those messages straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
The National Science Foundation last year used your taxpayer money to fund a climate change musical. Do you think that's a waste of your money?
No. I love musicals. This is your Green News Report.
And people need to learn about climate change.
Okay, Desi Doyen, you have been digging into Donald Trump's proposed budget. We've been speaking about how terrible it would be for the environment, but you have found it is even worse than that.
Yes, more details are emerging. It cuts everything non-military deeply to finance increased defense spending and a massive tax cut for the wealthiest Americans. In addition to the 30% cut to the budget of the Environmental Protection Agency, the Trump administration proposes pushing more environmental responsibilities onto the states, but then also cuts grants to the states by nearly half for everything from upgrading water infrastructure to toxic waste cleanup. The Great Lakes Protection Fund, which cleans up the drinking water supply for more than 20 million people, would be completely eliminated. That would leave the task solely to states like Ohio, which is already struggling with chronic toxic algae blooms in Lake Erie that have shut down water intakes for the city of Toledo's water supply. The National Park Service, which generates billions in tourism dollars in the states, would be cut by more than 80%. And despite Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Scott Pruitt's recent promises to refocus the EPA's mission on Superfund site cleanups, Trump cuts the Superfund program by 25%.
Because, of course, he does. But that's just what you say. Scott Pruitt, head of the EPA, said this on Fox News.
The past administration talked a lot. This administration's actually taking steps to do things to clean up the environment.
That was before the budget proposal came out.
Oh, so he was lying to Fox News.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll be very upset about it.
The Washington Post reports the Trump administration is also drafting plans to sell off and privatize public assets like bridges, airports, and even highway rest stops, and encourage the states to do so as well, and also accelerate the environmental permitting process for new infrastructure like pipelines.
Well, those highway rest stops are just there to keep people safe on the road so they have a place to rest. They're not making anybody any money. That needs to be fixed. Desi Doyen?
Independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont on MSNBC called the entire budget proposal immoral and pledged to fight it in the Senate.
Environmental programs will be decimated in this country. It is an outrageous budget. It is a budget that the American people do not want. It's a budget that should not see the light of day in the U.S. Senate.
Speaking of morality, on President Trump's overseas trip, Pope Francis gave Trump a nudge on climate change during his visit to the Vatican on Wednesday. Francis gave Trump a copy of his landmark encyclical on the environment, which calls action on climate change a moral duty. Activists projected an image of the words "Planet Earth First" onto the massive dome of St. Peter's Basilica, and Vatican officials pressed Trump to stay in the United Nations Paris Climate Agreement.
Donald Trump also reportedly promised he would read those books from the Pope. Do you think he will?
Probably not.
Is lying to the Pope any kind of high, amazing sin?
There's probably a joke about something in the woods right about now. Here in the U.S., the Justice Department sued automaker Fiat Chrysler this week, alleging the company installed secret software to cheat U.S. emissions tests, very similar to the Volkswagen emissions cheating scandal last year. Fiat Chrysler could be liable for up to $4.5 billion in fines for fraud and illegal pollution from its Jeep Grand Cherokees and Ram diesel pickup trucks sold since 2014. By the way, the vehicle testing lab that caught Volkswagen and Fiat Chrysler is also slated for a massive budget cut. In California, a massive landslide has buried a section of California's iconic Highway 1 in Big Sur under a 40-foot layer of rock and dirt. Likely the largest landslide in the state's history, extreme rains have caused more than $1 billion in damage to California's highways in more than 400 locations thanks to El Niño's extreme weather. Finally, a wind farm company has announced a free training program starting next month in Wyoming to retrain local former coal miners as wind turbine technicians to meet the needs for its newest wind farm. The kicker? It's a Chinese manufacturer. In other words, a Chinese company is tapping unemployed energy workers in Wyoming, showing that they can and should be retrained for new energy jobs.
And there's your leadership. Thank you, China. For much more on all of these reports and the ones we couldn't get to, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Yes, it is all about the children, even after they're born. Rick Smith.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. So the war on workers continues. This time, and well, again, it's teachers in the crossfire, in the crosshairs. And again, you look at what's going on in this country with education, public education. There is an attempt, we've got Betsy DeVos as the Secretary of Education. You look at this budget, it's all about education in corporate, getting rid of public education, moving to private. And oh, by the way, hushing and shutting up those teachers who have the audacity and dare to question what's going on and inform parents to what's going on, which is why I've asked Sarah Chambers to come talk with us, a Chicago Teachers Union Executive Board member and also a special ed teacher in the Chicago Public Schools. She and a few others have been suspended for, we'll ask Sarah. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So, I look at this war that's going on public education. I look at these assaults on teachers, and it looks like today you're on that list.
Yes, definitely.
So what happened? Walk me through what's going on with you.
So basically it was around April 6th, the day before we had our spring break, I received a letter out of nowhere that I was being suspended from Chicago Public Schools. And I'm a special education teacher. I've been teaching here for 8 years. I'm the longest standing special education teacher at my school. And the letter gave no reasoning whatsoever, but just said I was to remain at home and could not come back to school.
So basically suspended for no cause. And obviously you filed a grievance. And what would that bring you?
Yeah, so we tried to research into it, what was happening. Because I was just in shock. I'd never been disciplined before. I've always been an outspoken activist, but never been disciplined and always had distinguished ratings. And so, immediately we started fighting back. We got our lawyers involved, and, we had mass protests with parents and students and teachers at the school level trying to fight back because we knew this was a witch hunt, We knew this was because of my union activism throughout the city, and also because of my whistleblowing on how they were breaking special education law. So here in Chicago, and it's happening a lot of places around the country, they've been trying to, use the austerity agenda to cut budgets using special education, to actually cut funds from our special education program. And so I'm the co-chair of this task force, and we've been fighting back against it. That last year and this year, we fought so hard last year and had big protests that we actually won back $150 million back into special education. And as you can probably guess, they don't like that.
No. I mean, now the picture's becoming much clearer. You're a thorn in the side.
Oh, yes, definitely. And I stopped them from, slashing our budgets by over $100 million, and they want to save money.
And
so, yeah.
No, go ahead.
So, they're just targeting me. I think they got sick of it, and they wanted to silence me to really put a message and put it as an example for other teachers. They wanted to scare other teachers also into not speaking out.
And again, using you as the example. But at the end of this, I mean, aren't they going to look? I mean, there's due process. There's a grievance procedure. You're going to go through the court system. Eventually, they're going to lose this, have to pay you all the back pay and all of that stuff, and only harm the school system more. I guess I'm just, the short-sightedness of this kind of has me baffled.
Yeah, I mean, that's why everyone was so shocked, because they knew that this would immediately get major press. I mean, we've gotten press almost every single week, in major newspapers in Chicago. We were in the Huffington Post a week or two ago, and all the news looks good on me and terrible on our mayor, Rahm Emanuel, and Chicago Public Schools.
But let me ask you this. I mean, because, Chicago's been one of those places like Philadelphia, like Cleveland, like Milwaukee, like a lot of the large urban centers where this push to privatize public education, this push to destroy teachers' unions has really been the goal of mayors across the political spectrum. Is this just another step in that direction, in your thoughts?
Oh, yes, definitely. I think, Chicago is one of the epicenters of neoliberal education reform, right? So the attacks against us in Chicago, and again, we've put up a strong defense and in many ways a strong offensive as well. But, they're pushing to privatize all their schools, to turn them into charters. They're trying to close our schools. And really, they've been starving our schools. I mean, starving them through cutting the special education programs, through right now this year, they're even trying to get rid of our clerks. And they're just chopping away at the bit where our class sizes are skyrocketing, and they don't want people fighting against them. They want to continue on with their privatization agenda, and they don't want people challenging them.
And in your opinion, that's it. This is just pure retribution. We're going to stick it to you.
Oh yeah, and I would say the other thing, I've been very vocal along with a lot of my colleagues on fighting for progressive revenue. So fighting for millionaires tax that directly affects the mayor's friends. We've been fighting for, the closing the corporate loopholes. And that challenges really the top players in Chicago and a lot of their rich friends. So they don't want to be challenged in that way either.
Well, let me ask you this then, because, the firing should just be the beginning of your worries. I mean, you're talking about, taking on the most powerful people in the country. Are we worried that at some point they just knock you off to be done with you?
Sometimes I do worry that, but I know, we have a strong movement behind us. My parents are behind me, my students, and we have the whole movement of Chicago. So I don't think they'll be able to get away with it. I think it's just going to cause more anger and more fight back against them.
Now, I go back to this in Chicago again, all of the bad neoliberal ideas, all of the Education Incorporated ideas, all of the Arnie Duncan ideas really, started in your neck of the woods, right? Broad Foundation.
Yeah. Arnie Duncan from here. Arnie Duncan was from Chicago.
So in looking at this, and I go back to, education being that hill that the working class of this country has to die on, because once they take that from us, there's really no hope. What are you asking people to do? What do you want folks to know what's going on?
I would just say, people should not be afraid. We have justice on our side. We have powers in numbers. And frankly, I think they're afraid of us. That's why they're doing this to target us, right? They know we are powerful. They know that we are strong within our communities. I work on the Southwest side, predominantly immigrant community, and, they strongly dislike the mayor and our governor, and and they've been fighting back. The protests are growing larger in Chicago and around the city, and I think we need to keep moving on that, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid if people are trying to target the activists. That's their goal, is they want us to hide and not protest anymore, but we just need to get stronger.
Yeah, you've got their attention. And what's interesting is you said that, they don't like the mayor or the governor. That's like a bipartisan disdain then.
Yeah, because our mayor is a Democrat, supposedly, wolf in sheep's clothing, and our governor is Governor Rauner, who's a Republican. But to be honest, a lot of the times they act in very similar ways. They're both trying to privatize our schools and make a profit off of the backs of our students.
Now, when you talk to these parents, because, one of the things that I read about you is you're an activist, especially on the special education point. And as you pointed out, you cost them a boatload of money that they wanted to gut from special education. What should parents know? Because, I think most of us, we think that the school board is doing the right thing. They got the best interest of the kids in mind. But what should parents know?
Parents need to always ask questions, and ask questions of the special education teachers, general education teachers. And what we see happening a lot now is school districts are denying students to get evaluated for special education. Because once they're evaluated, school districts are worried if they become into special ed, that'll cost the district more money. So what we're seeing is they're denying parents, even when there's tons of evidence for years that they should be evaluated. So, I've had students who should have been evaluated since first, second grade. They've been on interventions and on watch, and they didn't actually get into special education until 8th grade because they were denied all those years. So parents really need to continue to ask questions, do research on laws such as IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and, be persistent and take everything you hear from the district with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I mean, again, I go back to this, and, you look at the privatization movement. And what's scary to me is, again, to me, the big part of it is doing away with that special education and creating, a system of if you've got any problem whatsoever, you're out, you're warehoused somewhere. It's not a good future.
No, it's scary for our future.
And that's why I think it's important for folks like you who are willing to step forward and take the arrows and the attacks. So that we know what's going on. What do you say to other teachers, though? I mean, because look, there's got to be a chilling effect for the rest of your profession to see you going through what you're going through.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. They've seen that I've been in the news over the years, that I've had lots of protests and big actions at my school. So it does worry them a bit. But I just keep telling them, don't let this scare you. Then the district wins. Then Rahm Emanuel wins. You need to just keep fighting back harder. But it does have somewhat of a chilling effect, and we don't want that to happen because that means they win.
Now, this seems to be a common thing that happens in the Chicago school district. People speak out, people get a little attention, and then they're out the door. I think of some of the people I've had on the program over the years that have kind of gone this same path. This seems like the MO.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've known of, Shion Franzinger Barrett, they've targeted multiple times. Tim Megan, he ran for city councilman for our alderman, they targeted him. So, yeah, it's decently common.
So what can we do? Last question I've got for you. What can our listeners do? What can I do? Is there anything that we can do to push back on this?
Well, one ask I would do, especially for people who are coming from all different states and cities, if they could actually call our mayor, Rahm Emanuel, and demand that they reinstate me, and my name's Sarah Chambers. The number for calling Rahm Emanuel is 312-744-3334. So people could call that number, 312-744-3334. And if for people listening who are actually in Chicago, they can contact their alderman to put pressure on the mayor to reinstate me, because Mayor Rahm Emanuel controls our appointed Board of Education, so he could really snap his fingers and make this go away.
Yeah, and if you're not in Chicago, just call and tell them anyway, right?
Yes, definitely.
Harass, hound, make sure that they know what's going on. Sarah, I wish you the best of luck. As this continues, we'd love to have you come back on and talk to us again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah Chambers. Again, this is this is what happens all across the country in these urban centers. And you look at Philadelphia, again, another one of those places where you see this kind of attack. Sad stuff, but I wish Sarah nothing but the best. Quick break, right back.
I see trees
Yes, it is all about the children, even after they're born. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day known as among the darkest days for labor, the Memorial Day Massacre. For days, strikers had suffered arrests and severe beatings at the hands of Chicago police, who physically prevented them from establishing picket lines at South Chicago's Republic Steel. Joined by supporters from practically all walks of life, strikers decided late in the afternoon to march to the gates, determined to picket. For Michael Dennis, author of The Memorial Day Massacre and the Movement for Industrial Democracy, Southeast Chicago became a crucible in which a wide spectrum of social and political alternatives became possible. The Little Steel strike was propelled by the realization that workers lived in a country dedicated to democratic freedom, but worked under conditions of near autocracy. Men, women, and children, black, white, and Mexican workers all chanted CIO, CIO, as they marched down Green Bay Avenue. The Chicago police waited for them, armed with revolvers, nightsticks, and blackjacks. Strikers defended their right to picket as police once again formed a solid line, preventing their passage. The police soon launched tear gas canisters and began firing into the crowd. The picketers turned away in a futile attempt to escape the staggering brutality. When the dust settled, 10 were killed, 30 more shot, 28 others hospitalized, with 8 suffering permanent disability and another 20 to 30 injured. Virtually all those shot had wounds in the back or side. Michael Dennis notes the massacre cast the die for the strike. Collaboration between municipal officials, corporate leaders, and the military in suppressing the strike would go uncontested by federal authorities and cheered by middle-class opinion. The campaign to organize Little Steel had suffered a crushing blow.
From New York, this is your World in 2 Minutes. I'm your host, Luke Vargas, for Talk Media News. At least 23 people have been killed in what appears to be a terrorist attack aimed at Egypt's Coptic Christian community. The incident occurred as a bus of pilgrims were en route to the monastery of St. Samuel, southwest of Cairo. According to the New York Times and Egyptian state media, at least 40 children have been taking part in the monastery visit when gunmen opened fire on a chartered bus and another vehicle traveling with it. Children are believed to constitute a large part of the attack's death toll. Egypt's 10% Coptic community has found itself targeted for years. In early April, a pair of churches were attacked in suicide bombings that killed some 46 people. The Filipino military is making strides to drive out Islamic State fighters who captured parts of a southern city earlier this week. President Rodrigo Duterte said Friday that terrorists should surrender and engage in dialogue, but in characteristic fashion, Duterte said that, quote, "If you cannot be convinced to stop fighting, so be it. Let's just fight." Duterte went on to confirm that foreign fighters are believed to be among the militants who captured Marawi City on Mindanao Island on Tuesday. And if you can believe it, Google is about to learn a lot more about your spending habits. The tech company says arrangements with third-party vendors now enable it to capture some 70% of all debit and credit card purchases in the United States. A new Google product announced this week will combine that data with location information from cell phones, your Google search history, and Google's understanding of the internet ads displayed to you. Google's offering isn't geared to you or me, but to advertisers who want to see whether their ads actually lead to real-world purchases. To opt out of the new program, head to google.com/settings/ads. For more global news headlines, visit talkmedianews.com.
Making the blue blood see red. The Rick Smith Show.
Fascist, you may be surprised. People all over this world are getting organized to bound to lose. You fascists are bound to lose.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show.
Race hatred cannot stop us. This one.
Janice sent me an email with a statement from White House spokesperson Hope Hicks. Thought I'd get a kick out of it. Hope Hicks said, evidently in the statement, President Trump has a magnetic personality and exudes positive energy, which is infectious to those around him. He has an unparalleled ability to communicate with people whether he is speaking to a room of 3 or an arena of 30,000. He has built a great reputation throughout his life and treats everyone with respect. He is brilliant with a great sense of humor and an amazing ability to make people feel special and aspire to be more than they ever thought possible. I don't know who they're describing, but I guess hope. Good fictional writing. I don't know. This is not the guy that I see. I see a con man. I see someone who, honestly, truthfully, not. And in fact, you look at this little tour around the globe where he, the breakup tour. Wow. I mean, again, I've been using that word a lot recently because, maybe it's just I'm not smart enough to come up with anything else that astonishes me the way every day's news cycle does with what this administration does. I don't know. But, this kind of, look, we've always had administrations who have done things to, they want to promote their point of view. They want to, to prop up their ideas. They want to do that. I remember during the Bush years, they held fake press conferences where they had, staffers with press jackets on asking questions. Never to this level of propaganda. Never to this level of just bold-faced lying. Just making stuff up. And, I sit and I read things that come out of this White House, and I can do nothing but scratch my head and go, we're totally screwed. Because someone's going to read this, and this is why they do it. Last week we had a conversation with a professor who said, you look at this stuff, for the vast majority of people, they're able to filter the fake news. They're able to find the nonsense and figure out the BS. But for some, a small percentage, a dangerous small percentage, they feed right into this stuff. Yes, he's the greatest. He's wonderful. He's terrific. There are days where I just go, how can we be as a country so over misinformed, so easily misdirected, so easily led astray, so easily divided and pitted against one another? I mean, honestly and truthfully, we're living through a moment we are living history. We are living what our great-grandchildren will look back on as either a time where the country came together and fought back against the insanity, or where, they'll look back and go, how were they so dumb? How did that generation not see it? I think back to Germany in World War II. People go, how'd you not know that he was going to be, this evil? People didn't believe it could happen. We're living through that moment right now that generations down the road will look back and critique as either we took the right path or we continued down the road to insanity. Scary stuff. And I look at this statement, man. Thanks, Janice, for I didn't see that, but wow. The new word of the day. Wow. If you've got any thoughts, I'd love to see them. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, email them to me. I do answer all emails. Personally, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you get the podcast, The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, again, email me anytime, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much. See you tomorrow.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Together, we can make America better. Email rick@thericksmithshow.com or interact with us anytime at thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
It's color.